If you still need convincing that an EV can be fun to drive, you clearly haven't been paying attention. All caught up? Good. Now, while last year the Hyundai Ioniq 5N was my favourite performance EV, the Italians have been cooking up a storm. Meet the Abarth 600E, which we're going to dissect today to see whether it's amazing to drive on the road, on the track, and whether it's got a sting in its tail. Because this Abarth is a sibling with the hot Alfa Junior Veloce. But crucially, it has several key differences versus its Italian sibling, starting with the price. Because both versions of this 600E, this Scorpionissima 280 horsepower car and the 240 entry car, both of them duck under the £40,000 mark. And that is crucial because it means they don't get hit by the UK's luxury car tax, which is so expensive, it might put you off buying a car altogether. But this car comes very competitively priced because not only is it close to the MG4 X-Power, it's also a close rival to the Alpine A290 and the Mini Aceman JCW. And compared to those, it has some key differences. I mean, firstly, it looks, I think, the best of the lot, even in this very aggressive purple shade. And this, by the way, is the top of the range Scorpionissima model. It will be limited in production to 1,949 units, but if you buy them, apparently Abarth will probably lift the production number and make a lot more of them. But the good thing is even the lower spec car looks basically the same. Under the bonnet, this top of the range car has 280 horsepower and an electric motor, and it splits that torque at the front with a limited slip differential, a mechanical one, just like the Alfa Junior Veloce, which did a really good job with that. Now, around the sides here is another one of its special tricks. It's a bespoke Michelin performance EV tyre, and it comes wrapped on these 20-inch wheels, which I think look flipping brilliant. Now, these tyres have a really good setup apparently for both road and track, as does the suspension behind them. It's got unique bushes, unique damping, and we're told this also has quite aggressive camber, and I've seen, just like the Alfa Romeo Junior, the camber is very aggressive at the rear as well, which bodes well for track driving. Now, we've got a battery in the floor here, which gives the car about a 207-mile range, something we're going to put to the test. And at the rear of the car here, we're told, and this is actually something I'm really excited about, compared to the Junior Veloce, which of course it shares much parts with at the back here, this is even stiffer on the rear beam. So apparently that gives us more lateral grip, and it should be quicker around the track. We'll see how that feels on the road. Now, the tail is possibly one of my favourite features on this car. It's not the prettiest, it's this rear spoiler up here, but the reason I like it is because it's a nod to the Abarth 850TC, and that was an old race car where they had to pin the rear engine bonnet open to keep it cool, and then they found out that having a bonnet propped up like this was good for aerodynamics. So, inspired by that, they slapped this spoiler on the back here. Looks quite cool. The rear of the car is very aggressive, and it's also a place where we've got something unique on this car for this class, and that is a sound generator. Just like the 500E, it makes fake exhaust sounds. I didn't think it sounded great on the 500E, but apparently it's different on this one. Oh, and by the way, you know those performance tyres? You can, if you want, pay £100 and swap them for eco tyres, but that doesn't feel right on a hot Abarth, does it? I'm bearing in mind that this is the most powerful road-going Abarth made yet, because neither the 124 or any of the 500 base models crack 200 horsepower. Well, it would feel wrong putting eco tyres on, wouldn't it? And of course, you're in a proper performance car. Look at the seats you get in this Scorpionissima model. These are, of course, the raciest ones you can get, and unfortunately, you can't get them on the entry-level 600E. Please, Abarth, allow people to spec them on, because they don't just feel great, they don't just support you and hold you in all the right bits, but they look fantastic. I love this pattern on them as well. It's a real sort of 90s throwback. And the rest of the cabin feels massively uplifted from the standard 600E. Now, we still get this really weird section down here. I'm still not really sure what that's all about, but it does hide away a lot of storage space, and you've got some uplifted bits elsewhere in the cabin. It doesn't feel quite as theatrical as the Alfa Junior with its buttresses up here, but it does at least feel a lot more special than the standard car. And don't forget, this is cheaper than the Alfa. Also, you've got a good amount of tech aboard as well. Now, the screen ahead of me here, this is nice and sharp and clear. It's nothing overly special these days, but it does look good and it's quite gamey. And the infotainment system as well is sharp, it's crisp, and it's easy to use. And you get wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. So on the move, this car is a nice thing to use. And I should shout out the steering wheel, because yes, it's just a simple two-spoke design, but it feels great in your hands. The seating position in this car, despite there being a battery in the floor, is really good. That's if you're in the front. If you're in the back, well, it is a little bit of a squeeze in here. Now that was true in the Alfa Junior Veloce because it had the same seats, and well, while there is a cutout here for your knees, the material is really firm, so you're probably going to have to explain to people why you've got sore knees. Footroom is okay actually, to be fair, and headroom is not too bad either, but the space in the back here is definitely one for teenagers and kids, not so much adults. I mean, you don't even get cup holders in the door. Although the Abarth does claw back when it comes to boot space, because compared to the best of its rivals I've mentioned, it actually does have a very respectable boot. So much so, in fact, that it swallows all of our camera gear, my race helmet, a jacket and a tripod with no problem. It fits really snugly, which is handy, because this is a Scorpion that likes to fly.
More on that in a bit. But first,
before we find out whether those potentially quite significant differences to the Junior Veloce have made a difference at high speed, let's see what this 600E is like to live with at normal speed. And to do that, we are now on a very bumpy British B road, and I really can sense right away how similar this car feels in terms of its dealing of bumps and how it feels going around tighter corners, how similar it feels to the Alfa, and that is a compliment because the Alfa, while yes, these are quite firm riding cars, they're never as firm as you might have expected. Anyone coming from a 595 or especially from a 695 Abarth will be familiar with the slightly fidgety ride you get in a sporty hatchback. This is very much the same, but it's okay. If you pick up the pace, actually, the ride gets better and better. In fact, it's not until you're over about 50 miles per hour that really you start to feel the quality of the damping and the bump stops doing their job. Then the car starts to flow a bit more. Now, the powertrain itself, interestingly, obviously it's the same motor in both versions, and in this Scorpionissima version with 280 horsepower, when we get on track, it should feel quite different. But at lower speed, we have basically the same performance no matter the version you go for. And in fact, that's why the range is identical on both of them, because when you drive on the road, you're going to get about 200 miles of claimed range. And it feels very much just like a normal electric car, but one with a really smooth and very predictable delivery of power. I have to say, they've done a really, really good job, both Abarth and Alfa, in tuning this setup so that it feels very manageable, but also quite petrol-like in its delivery, the way it gradually builds up and then you get a surge of torque higher up. It's nice, it's quite rewarding. The steering also stands out from the very moment you turn the wheel, even just 1 degree. Now, it's an electric power steering system, obviously everything is these days, and especially EVs, so there's not really any feel at road speed, but what you do sense is just a real nice quick front end, and it gives you the feeling of confidence, especially when you're coming into corners like this where you just think, if I've underestimated how tight the corner is, just like I did there, it doesn't matter, I only have to load on a little bit more steering lock, because the steering rack, because the response the front wheels have to how much I'm turning is really quick, it's really direct, but at the same time it's not overly darty, so if I were to be on a motorway, I'm not constantly making corrections. It is well judged. Now, of course, there are 3 driving modes in this car. We're in Turismo, which is the base one. You get less power and less torque in this mode to give you your best range. But you can click into a mode called Scorpion Street, which obviously is for the road. But it means you've got more power and torque. And it also means now the throttle response is slightly different. The accelerator is slightly quicker to react. But again, still not unmanageable. The key thing is that no matter what driving mode you're in, you can, at just the press of the D button, you can switch from D to B, and drivers of EVs will know, and even drivers of hybrids will know, that B means it ramps up the amount of energy that is taken back into the battery when you're braking and even when you're just coasting. So that's good, because not only does it mean you're more efficient, but it also means you've got less work to do. So I can come into this corner here, it's a good jump spot, and not brake. I can just coast in and let the regen slow the car down. But on track, you can switch that off to give a more natural feel. We'll test that in a moment.
But first, we have to see what this Abarth is like at pace on the road. And well, it's bloody brilliant. At speed, that fidgety ride is replaced by the sort of damping quality you get on an Alfa Giulia Quadrifoglio, smothering bumps even when they come mid-corner, under the loaded wheel. And best of all, the 600E's use of hydraulic bump stops means it can take a real pounding, even when you find a jump. It's exciting in a straight line too, with a sub 6 second 0 to 60 time that we validated on our test. and the sort of scrabbling front-wheel drive acceleration any hot hatch lover can appreciate.
There's one thing to test before we get on track, and that is something that at the moment is unique to this Scorpionissima version. And I say at the moment, and I'll explain why that might change in a little bit. But that is the car's sound generator, because like the 500E, this 600E Scorpionissima comes with a sound generator under the back of the car. So that means it's a fake exhaust sound. I'm going to turn it on now and see if it's not that good, because in the 500E, I wasn't a fan of it. Now initially, and at low speed, just sounds quite drony at the back end. For those of us who've had modified car exhausts, it's not really the sound you want, but at the same time, it's not too intrusive. So it's there, it's okay. It will signal to people on the outside that you're coming through. But I have noticed something quite interesting, something I didn't expect. And as I accelerate out of this village onto the country road, I can demonstrate to you the tone compared to the 500E is different. In fact, it's slightly sweeter. It's gone from being that horrible low down sound that almost makes you feel a bit like, oh, I want to switch that off right away, to something that's quite nice. It's almost like a 6-cylinder engine. Of course, unlike the Ioniq 5N from Hyundai, we don't have fake gears to play with here, so you don't have that really interactive feel that you get and that sound that you get with the gear shifts. It is just the same sound, just at different tones, but it's nicer, it's sweeter. And another reason why I think I much prefer it in this car is because this car is quicker than the 500E. No longer does it build really slowly like you're in some kind of labouring old go-kart. Now, picks up quite quick. And it fades away at much higher speed. In fact, when you get to motorway speeds or close to it, the sound almost disappears entirely. So it's not going to be drony on the motorway like that 500E's one was. So I think they've improved it for the better. Yet still, on the road, I think I'll switch it off. Although switching off the sound generator doesn't ensure that this becomes a silent EV, because there is a little bit of road noise. Those Michelins, while they have some special tech in them that apparently stops sound vibrating through them, there's still a bit of hiss. It's definitely not overly intrusive, but you're definitely aware this isn't riding on skinny little eco tyres. This is definitely on something a bit grippier. On track, however, that sound generator is actually very, very useful, not least because it gives you a signal of your speed. And it doesn't just give you a signal of speed, it also tells you how good this thing is on its front end, because I can hear, not only can I hear the front tyres scrabbling, but I can also hear just slight pitch changes in the electric motor. Now this electric motor revs to 15,000 RPM, but because of that really good accelerator response I mentioned before, it actually means you can pick your line, chuck in the car, up the curb, feel the damping, and just be really aggressive on the power. You can feel the negative camber as well. I'm not sure if it feels quite as darty as the Alfa Junior Veloce, but certainly if you chuck it in, it will turn in very nicely. It's all about the front end, this car, although, as I'll demonstrate to you on this next corner, it does like to cock a rear wheel as well, because as we mentioned, this rear end is stiffer. There you go, that was right up, Fiesta ST style. I should also tell you about the brakes. Now we can turn B mode on, but Abarth has tuned the brakes so that they feel more natural, and they do, with the B mode off. So I have a bit of information coming through the pedal, not tons, but I'm able to be very progressive and modulate it. So track day driving, it's going to be good, this car, and they reckon people will take it on track. Although I'm looking down at the percentage of battery, it's going down quick.
I mean, I wish racetracks had rapid chargers, because then this EV could keep doing this all day.
Yeah, that is of course the Achilles heel of small batteried EVs like this. It's fine if you just drive them in the city, but as soon as you drive them as their makers intended, well then the range will fall away. I have to admit, this car is fantastic by so many measures, and it does feel different to the Junior Veloce it shares so many parts with. Compared to the ID.3 GTX, this is definitely more fun around corners, and even compared to the Alpine A290, it feels more lively and more excitable. That felt more serious. This feels a bit wilder. But of course, with around 200 miles of range, you're going to have to live very close either to the track you're going to do track days at, or to the B roads you're going to do your blasts on. So this car feels like a fantastic driver's EV, but one that's best suited to people who live on their dream B road. But handily, because this is an Abarth, and Abarths of the 21st century have always been like this, they can be extreme, they can be wild, but most people just drive them like normal cars. And so therefore, this is a 600E that just looks and makes you feel great. And of course, because this car ducks under that 40k mark, which it critically means it dodges the luxury car tax, well then that means this is a relatively affordable performance EV, and that's not something we've been able to say for a very long time. And if you compare it to equivalent petrol hot hatches, well, some of those now are over 40 grand, especially when you tick a few boxes. Think the Golf GTI these days, and well, that means this car isn't just cheaper to buy, but it's also cheaper to tax. And if you charge it at home, it'll be cheaper to fuel as well. So this, in a way, is simply a more affordable way to do hot hatching, no matter the fuel you choose. And if you want to know why I was so excited to drive this car today, it was because the Alfa Romeo Junior Veloce that it shares many parts with set the bar so very high. And you're going to have to watch the video over here to find out why.